This is Think Like an Acrobat, a pro series by CircusTalk, and I'm your host, Shenea Stiletto. Think Like an Acrobat is a unique pro series that transcends the status quo of the circus industry to amplify your needs in a way that is deserved. We want you to think for yourself, and being equipped with our industry secrets and experts will help you to do so in a practical manner, because circus work is our work. My guest on this episode of Think Like an Acrobat is masterful circus and high-performance physiotherapist, Steve McCauley. And today he's going to teach us how to restore ourselves through the mastery of physio. Hi, Steve. Welcome to Think Like an Acrobat. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Coming to you from Las Vegas. And you?
Yeah, Las Vegas is good. We're doing well. Great time of the year in Vegas.
Fantastic. Well, Steve, you have over 30 years of experience with high performance settings, including a head athletic trainer for the Las Vegas Sting, and you've been instrumental in providing care and athletic training programs for several Las Vegas shows such as Cirque du Soleil's Mystere, Lord of the Dance, MGM's EFX, Jabberwockies, and Le Rev at the Wynn. And you are also currently the resident athletic trainer at the popular Las Vegas Circus Center. And today you are going to teach us how to restore ourselves. So to begin our deep dive into our discussion, I want to start by asking you first, Steve, what is the cost of not supplying a circus environment with adequate physiotherapy? In a perfect movement-based world, what does equitable access to physiotherapy look like, and what mechanisms should be in place?
So just to get started, I think the first question is better answered putting in some type of context. We know for sure that the detrimental effects on the body for doing high impact athletics is well documented, and that applies to into the circus world as well. But when it comes to putting a specific cost on it, we simply need to go into the research to find out about long-term detrimental effects with respect to osteoarthritic injury, with respect to osteoarthritic spine injuries, and then double that cost with regard to the age of the athlete. And so putting a value on that really depends on a couple things. It depends on the type of athletic activity that performer will be doing. We talk about circus. I think I'll come back to this point a few times. But when we talk about circus arts, I think it's important for the viewer to understand that circus is varied. Has a great many types of activities involved in what we consider circus arts. And each one of those activities can truly be described from a biomechanical standpoint and from a physiological standpoint as its own sport, bringing with it its own set of injuries, its own requirements for return to play, and its requirements for performance improvement. And so I'll go back to that point several times today, because I think it's important to answer those questions in that context. And so even in this context, again, it's important to understand the actual activity that the folks are participating in. But in general, I would answer the first question with saying that the costs are essentially unknown. And the effects of not having adequate health care applied to a performing artist in a show environment or in a repetitive environment like a show are truly unknown. That data is just now being compiled. A lot of it has to do, unfortunately, a lot of it gets carried away or mixed in with the regular workers' comp kind of information, because most of these athletes who are participating in an ongoing show or ongoing event are doing that as part of their job, and therefore the injury that they incur are work-related injuries. And so I would be interested to see some more studies that looked into or teased out the circus artist. We have some good examples and some data that comes out, Cirque du Soleil being one of them. But at Le Rev, we compiled 15 years of data. But again, to extrapolate the long-term costs is sort of unknown. And that's the problem, because we know from a physiological and anatomical component that these detrimental effects are incurring. We know that. My joke is always to the performer that, if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't maintain this conditioned state, even after your career is over, there will be a bill to pay. You'll have a you performed for a living bill come due, and the only question is, how do you pay for that bill? And if you maintain a healthy lifestyle and you maintain that strength and conditioning sort of level, then that bill is easily paid. If you do not, then the bill comes due. And so to answer the other questions in a perfect movement-based world, what would equitable access to physiotherapy look like? So it would look like the standard truly is a Cirque du Soleil or a Wynn Las Vegas at what we did at Le Rev, where the healthcare is readily available on a daily basis for the length of time that the artist or the performer is present. And this is truly the state of art, the state of the art for any athletic event. It's quite essentially, it's the sports medicine model. And following that sports medicine model has shown over the years, over the decades, to be the most efficient, most cost-effective form of application of healthcare to the athlete possible. And you start that process by getting the administrative folks to make a commitment to the performer's health, and not necessarily a commitment or understanding that their commitment to the bottom line, their commitment to selling tickets, their commitment to longevity of a show truly starts with adequate performer health and adequate provision of healthcare services to that performer health. Because as we know in sports medicine, as we know in the big four major sports and most other major sporting activities, that loss of a player is detrimental to the overall product that's being produced on the field. So if you lose your starting quarterback, what is the cost of that for losing 4 straight games because you have to bring in your a backup quarterback or someone who's less adequate to fill that role? In the performing arts setting, those changes are quite subtle, because if I take out an acrobat, if I take out a trampoline artist and replace them with another trampoline artist that maybe not as good as, they can get away with a lot. There's a lot that the audience member won't see. But if you compound those substitutions, then the show starts to look less. The show starts to degrade. And over a period of time, a show that was once a spectacular show and then visited again by the same people will walk away with a much different opinion. And as we know in the performing arts world, bad news travels fast. And so all you need is, a couple of months of putting together subpar performances, and then you've got quite the reputation to make up for. And all of that, and the cost of that is mounts up pretty astronomically and pretty exponentially. Where if you just invested in the front on taking care of the performer and ensuring that the performer doesn't miss show times, or if they do miss show times, it's greatly reduced because you're applying that care every day. Then that's the best world. And unfortunately, to get to that best world, the administrative folks, the folks who run the numbers in a show, need to understand that investment in the performer health is mandatory.
Wow. So brilliant, Steve. Thank you. Can you share with us important resources that circus artists can access on a regular basis to see what new elements to physiotherapy could be useful for them? Is there an online network, and are there affordable tools that you would recommend that artists can buy to self-prepare themselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I'm quite sure it was robust pre-pandemic, but I know now post-pandemic, the availability of folks telling you what to do is quite robust. And you need not look very far before you find someone's Instagram or someone's website or someone telling you how to fix your abs or how to fix your back or how to jump higher or all of these things. And so while the information is prevalent, we need to we as healthcare providers need to ensure that the artist, the performer, views this information with a critical eye. And there are a couple excellent resources that I want to share with your viewers. The first one is an excellent piece done on by Rolling Stone. And it was September 22nd. And I can share with you, I'll give you the link, but it covers, Rolling Stone's one of my favorite magazines because I believe they're really well researched. And so that article was easy to read, but yet informative. And so they went over the myriad of recovery options. And I think that's a great starting point. When I read that article, I thought, well, if I was dealing with an artist virtually, and I had to share with them how to get them started on their recovery processes, this article would be great to read because it covers everything from CBD to vasopneumatic pumps to Theraguns. It covers the entire gamut, and those are all the little tricks and the little tools that you'll see spread throughout Instagram and other social media sites where folks are using these things. And so I think it's important to start off with understanding what these things are. And so that article I thought was pretty good, like a nice little start. But as far as actual tools, let's take a step back. So let's talk about resources again. An excellent friend of mine, actually, who reached out to me when I first started here at the Circus Center. Her name is Emily Sherbert, and she is her website's the CircusTalk, and she has tremendous resources. And I direct everyone I know who I need to have access to that information to her website. And so again, I'm sure if you haven't spoken to her, you should. But her website is I think the first go-to with regard to access for artists who are seeking healthcare, who are seeking resources to help them get better. Remember, we live in the circus world is a wonderful, unique, crazy world, and sometimes we think of the circus world as maybe a Cirque du Soleil or a Ringling Brothers now that they're back, or some type of other organizational structure. And the truth is that the vast majority of circus performers are giggers, and they go from gig to gig, and they go from place to place. And And they truly are independent, and they are working independently, not only with their art and perfecting their skill set, but they're also working independently to create strength and conditioning programs and then to manage their injuries. One of the surprising things I found about starting athletic healthcare here at the Circus Center was the prevalence of the understanding of the prevalence of this, the amount of performers there are. And so I would say that the institutional circuses are clearly just the tip of the iceberg. I think the vast majority of circus artists are the gig workers, right? And they're the ones who come in here and slug it out every day, and just for the hopes of getting their gig for the next month or 2 months or whatever, or getting their small tour or whatever the case may be. And so giving those folks that kind of information is paramount. And so I direct them to the Circus Doc because it's excellent reading, and it's a great start. And it actually helps clinicians. Well, it helps me as a clinician because now I'm speaking to an educated artist, and an educated artist who I know has read some legit material and understands these things versus the vast sea of information that's available in social media. There's another great article, another great organization, the American Circus Educators Alliance. I have that website, I have that link for you too. And they're great because it is Jen Crane is the lead physical therapist there, or the lead person for this organization, and the information is sound, and it's scientifically sound, and it's peer reviewed research, and so these are the things that I direct my patients to, and I would direct anyone listening to this podcast to make sure that your information, the information that you're gathering about your injury or about training techniques or about recovery, is from a peer-reviewed source. And you just simply do the research. You just keep digging and making sure that the information that they're giving you, whomever these people are doing it, that information is coming from a peer-reviewed source. So, like a journal, right? The American American Dance Association, or the National Athletic Trainers Association, or American Physical Therapy Association. These types of folks put out peer-reviewed studies in their journals, and so this is the information you need to rely on.
And what would those tools in like everyday situations be, Steve, that you would recommend that artists could use for themselves?
Yep. So it really depends on what we're trying to have the artist do. In other words, what's the focus of the healthcare provision? Or am I trying to promote the artist's recovery? And if that's the case, then again, that article in Rolling Stone, but directing them to organizations that promote this sort of recovery, these tools and equipment. Then, of course, there's nutrition, and so nutrition is a ginormous part of recovery, particularly in the circus arts, or actually any aesthetic sport or activity, because there's a much greater emphasis on the need to manipulate nutrition to get to what people believe to be the aesthetic goal, whatever that goal is. And so nutritional components or nutritional websites are very important, but then I could do an entire podcast just on what to avoid as far as the nutritional webcast, information. What I can tell you is there is a distinct difference between someone who promotes themselves as a nutritionist and someone who is a registered dietitian. And so if the only takeaway that I would give folks is when they're researching nutritional dietary guidelines, that information should come from a registered dietitian. Registered dietitian has a bachelor's or a master's degree in nutritional studies from an accredited university and is the leading authority in things that revolve around the world of nutrition, and not unfortunately a self-proclaimed nutritionalist.
Well, we're coming down to just the last few minutes of the interview, Steve. So I wanted to round it out with one or two last questions. Are there consistencies in body breakdown or chronic injuries that you've observed in circus artists?
So, I'll go back to that original point that answer truly depends on the actual circus, the actual skill set that the athlete's doing. And like I said before, just like in professional sports, or just like in the sports world, the circus world, each one of those acts is in and of itself its own sport. And so to be more specific, it's impossible for me to answer that question more specifically, because we would be talking about, in teeterboard, what are the prevalent injuries and what are the ways to prevent these types of injuries, or in aerial apparatus. And even within the aerial world, there's a difference between straps and hoop, and there's a difference between flying trapeze and hand-to-hand trapeze stuff. So unfortunately for your viewers, your listeners, it's impossible for me to answer that without having a little more in-depth role. But there is an excellent article, again, I'll send you the link, done by John Fouts, and he attempts to categorize the circus world with regard to the level of impact. And so he's delineated circus injuries or circus activity into high impact and low impact, and then goes on to explain similarities in prevalences of injury within that high impact and that low impact. And it's an excellent article, and it's a great read for folks who want to kind of get their hands around what to expect and what to avoid. First of all, to categorize what I do. Am I high impact or am I lower impact? And then the article goes on to kind of describe those types of injuries. So it's a great jumping off point, and it's a great conversation also for healthcare providers with regard to the medical management of these types of injuries.
Can you debunk certain myths that swirl around in the athletic training world around high performance and circus artists, Steve?
Sure. The first one is contortion is to be avoided at all costs because contortionists break all the rules. That can't be further from the truth. A contortionist injury is unique, like every other injury that you'll see, and it requires an understanding of the person in totality. If you're not providing healthcare in the circus world, or actually in the athletic world, in a holistic manner, I truly think you're doing a disservice now to your folks. And so understanding, so just for the contortionist folks, because I brought it up, understanding contortion and where contortion comes from and how a contortionist may view an injury or the application of healthcare goes a long way to helping you be successful in provision or providing that healthcare. Another one that just comes to mind is a hair hanger, right? So hair hanging is this really kind of cool, secretive, handed down over generations skill set, and understanding where those folks come from and where they learned their skill and how they view that skill goes a long way to helping you provide healthcare. And so as far as myths go, there circus circus artists are circus artists are amazing athletes, and just like any other amazing athlete you're going to treat, it needs to be done holistically, and you need to understand all the various aspects that show up on your table, both mentally, emotionally, inflammatory response, tissue breakdown, response to metabolism. And so that would be the myth. The myth is that there's nothing different here. It's just truly unique skill sets, but with regard to how they incur injury upon the body, there's nothing new here. You need to know your folks. You need to try to understand where they come from and how they view this injury. And then that gives you the roadmap to begin to do the treatment.
Any last thoughts, Steve? We have about 1 more minute left. Anything that you would like to leave us with that you think is very crucial and important to round out this conversation today?
I think if you're listening to this and you're currently a circus artist or an athlete of any style, but certainly a circus artist, and you're suffering from injury, or you're suffering from a lack of performance, reach out, find resources to get this looked at. They are available. So you can start with the CircusTalk. You know, on one of her pages, she has a comprehensive list of healthcare providers all over the country that in some way, shape, or form specialize or have a knowledge base on what you're doing. So you're not alone at all, and there are excellent resources available, much better than there were 10 years ago, or even 30 years ago. I'm going to die soon, I guess. 30 years ago from when I first started. So don't be quiet. Reach out and get the care that you deserve.
Thank you, Steve, for teaching us how to think like an acrobat, because to think like an acrobat means consciously using a combination of our internal and external capabilities as a guide to progressive efficiency and intentional achievement. This is the AAA segment, or Ask an Acrobat, portion of the show, where I answer questions that didn't make it into the final cut of the interview, or where I share my own reflections on the episode topic. So this conversation with athletic trainer Steve was fascinating. And again, Steve doubled down on the fact that he is an athletic trainer. Obviously, the worlds of physiotherapy and athletic training go hand in hand. And Steve comes from a very diverse background, which is why I thought he would be such a phenomenal guest. I thought the most important takeaway from this episode is demanding that you have access to physiotherapy, to athletic trainers, and to healthcare at your show. And if you are a show, demanding that of yourselves, and that is such an important aspect of what you do to round out a budget. I know that is not usually a part of any circus show budget, the majority of them. And Steve knows that as well, that is usually the last thing. We have the makeup budget, the hair, the everything, the costumes. And when you're usually asking about anything like that, now it comes back onto the artist to have specialty insurance, to have liability insurance, to take on all these coverages. But there is nothing there that is in the court of the show provider. And so I think we need to continue, if you've already doing that out there, demanding, or not just demanding, but stating that, questioning that when you go into your contract. Will we have healthcare? What kind of healthcare providers are going to be on site? What is going to be the exchange of us having healthcare? Maybe that's something that you can negotiate inside of your contract. And again, it doesn't mean that everyone's going to have access to that same thing in their contract. It could be something that you specifically negotiate on your own terms, that you have outside access to somebody external on site. Or if there's a grouping of artists that gets together and says, we need this to maintain our performance, to maintain our contracts, and to be able to make it to the stage every single day and beyond. Remember, Steve said it doesn't just stop with restoring yourself when you leave performance in any way, shape, or form. It's what you stay dedicated to that will encourage the rest of your life outside of being on the stage every single day or doing that kind of difficult activity every single day. So it's beyond that. It's beyond just right now. It's a holistic model that will affect and impact every single aspect of your life. You never know what you're going to have to recover from. So remember that when you are in a show of any nature, because you never know what type of impact your performance is going to have on the rest of your life. And there should be people that are responsible for that. You are doing for them, then they can do for you. So ask an acrobat so that you can think like an acrobat. Here are the top 5 takeaways from Let's Restore for Ourselves, Mastering High Performance Physiotherapy with athletic trainer Steve McCauley. Number 1, having healthcare providers on site every day for a show should be mandatory. Number 2, organizations should not just be focused on teaching correct technique, but providing the resources that are available for when an artist gets injured. Number 3, rehabbing the transition back to the stage is the most crucial, but can be dangerous and fraught with misunderstanding. Number 4, each circus arts discipline can be described as its own sport. And number 5, if you can't afford to have healthcare at your show, you shouldn't have the show. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Think Like an Acrobat, where we learned how to restore ourselves through mastering high performance physiotherapy with Steve McCauley. Please make sure to send in your video or audio questions about future episodes to news@circustalk.com. Stay tuned for the next episode of Think Like an Acrobat with your host, Shenea Stiletto.